Perfect. Great. It's number two of Talk with Quinn-Ty. Today I'm joined by Mr. GorillaStrength, aka Mr. Big T, aka Tashan.
Yeah,
So a bit of an introduction to him. He is one of the most motivated individuals that I know. So I actually asked him to come on this today so we can have a bit of an insight to what's going on inside of his head. How are you
yeah,
doing?
thank you. Appreciate that, man.
Very
You're doing
welcome.
some good things over here. You'll help a lot of people with this, so it's only right to come on and help you out.
Perfect. I appreciate it. As the topic that we're going through today is acting in your best interests, more specifically self-discipline. So just to kick it off, what is the importance of self-discipline to you? As in, what does it mean when you apply it to yourself?
When do I apply it to myself?
What does it mean when you apply it to yourself? As in, what does this term self-discipline mean to you?
Yeah, self-discipline, to me, it means everything. Because, when you're in school, you always taught from a young age that you need to complete a task.
Mm-hmm.
And you're always micromanaged by teachers and head teachers and support workers to complete a task. You're reminded, even now when the children come home from school and they've got online homework, they send text messages and emails to the parents to remind the children, to prompt the children to finish this homework.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that self-discipline really is about showing initiative. So can you complete a task when no one's looking over your shoulder? Can
Mm-hmm.
you be self-motivated enough to do what you need to do without people saying, have you done this? Have you done that? And that, to me, that's what self-discipline is. If you can have the self-discipline to govern your own actions and to act in your own best interests, what that does is that improves your chances for longevity and
Mm-hmm.
consistency. And then what that does is that basically puts you in the best position to succeed. So self-discipline is the foundation of any kind of success you want in life.
Definitely. I can definitely agree with you. You mentioned before about being in school, being in work. They're classed as learning environments. So somebody, like you said, is over your shoulder, making sure that you're doing the task and making sure you're doing this. I think once we're out of the learning environment, once we're out of school, once we're out of work, we're so much more relaxed in ourselves. It's like the weekend, you're outside of the working week and then you're more lax on yourself. So you're not putting the same pressures that you should be doing because there's a lot more that we
And
could be doing in our free time.
yeah, I tend to agree. But I feel like, when you look at the kind of the education environment, national curriculum or the school environment, whether it's primary school, high school, college, university, what we're doing is we're teaching people how to be satisfied with mediocrity.
Mm-hmm.
Because when how often is it that you arrive to lessons earlier, or you're the first one in off the playground, or you're the first one in off the lunch break, or the break that you get. So we're teaching people to be satisfied with mediocrity.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame because a lot of people, when you were doing work in the educational system, we're looking for shortcuts. We don't want to do the work properly and complete it to completion. What we're trying to do is we're trying to do that work in the shortest possible way to save time on that work. So it sets us up for failure, really, because then when we leave the educational system, we come out into the real world. Whether it's you have an aspiration to start a business, or you get into the workplace, and then the shortcuts that you used to kind of looking for in school and college and university, you by default you start beginning to look for
Mm.
these shortcuts in your work life. And so it sets people up for failure because they don't have the self-discipline to complete a task through all of the phases right until the end without being governed.
Definitely. No, I definitely agree with that. So, do you feel like to stay motivated, to stay self-disciplined, you need to have that drive? You need to love what you're doing rather than just working for the sake of it because someone's told you to?
Yeah, I feel like if you need to watch motivational videos on YouTube, then what you're doing probably isn't for you. Now it's good to watch stuff like Les Brown and watch, your favorite entrepreneur or your favorite rapper turned businessman, 50 Cent, P Diddy, Jay Z, them type of guys. I watch
Mhm.
them guys, but I don't use them to give myself a kick up the bum. I don't use them for motivational purposes. I use them because they have certain philosophies and ideologies that I resonate with, and I like to learn about that. So I feel like if you don't have the drive, don't kid yourself. Don't just go through the motions.
Mhm.
You need to be all into what you're doing, really, because again, it just comes to when you're doing something, you want to put yourself in the best possible position to succeed. If you don't put yourself in the best possible position to succeed, what are you doing?
Very true.
You know what I mean?
Go hard or go home.
That's right.
Perfect. The second point I want to roll on to is the energy or the feeling that you get once you've completed a big task. So that's in terms of short-term and long-term goals. So how do you feel that affects the next goal? Because if I was to complete a goal today that I've been working on for a year, I believe that might spark a fire that you might not have had. So you feel like more confident in yourself. You can do more to reach your next goal. What are your thoughts on that?
I feel like you need to have a long-term perspective of where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I give you an answer to that. So 5 years ago, I was in university, and I went through this crazy phase. So I was in university. A bit of pretext to that. So before I went to university in 2014, I was an amateur boxer. I had 2 pro contracts lined up, one in Los Angeles and one down in London. When I went for my medical, I was getting migraines at the time, so my brain scans weren't very good, so I didn't get my license. So I struggled with depression a little bit. Went to university. When I went to university, my main goal was not to become get a degree or anything like that. My main goal was to be in a space where I could self-educate myself. So I went through this whole journey of ordering like 300 books: self-help, business, law of attraction, spirituality, finance, economics. Ordered loads of books. I read them all, and I made summaries of all these books.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd read the book, I'd underline it, and then I'd type where I'd underlined it, and I'd put it into my own words. So if I needed to read it at a later date, what I'd do then is it would just be there ready, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't know what I wanted to do with those summaries. I have over 200 summaries of books that I've read. Now today, fast forward to today, I've got my Forex trading career where I'm a day trader, right? Mm-hmm. And I have my educational groups, and those summaries are now being used for the educational groups. But I'm like a couple of weeks away from starting my website, where I'm going to upload those summaries and charge people a yearly subscription fee, £1 a month, £12. So 6 years ago, I didn't know the outlook of where I am today. But the small goals of saying, look, if I just review this book at a later date, I can use this at whatever I want to do with it. Now, 5 years in the future, this has developed into a full-scale business plan with projections, profits, losses, what my fixed costs are, as in the website subscription that I have to pay. So the short-term goals, when you build them up, it fits within your long-term perspective. So you have to have short-term goals.
So all the short-term goals are kind of an investment to the long-term goals. Let's say reading that book was a short-term goal. You finished it. So you've completed your goal, but you didn't know that goal was also aiding you in your long-term goal, even though that might not have been your goal where you are now. It's just been a building block. But without that, you wouldn't be here.
Yeah, that's right. I tend to agree. What you need to understand, and it comes back again to the first question you asked me about self-discipline, is when you're consistently disciplined, right? You're just going through life, and everything you do, because all things, small things, the way you do anything is the way you do everything, right? So when you go through life and you're consistently disciplined and you're doing everything the right way, there is times in life where you will get rewarded with a golden egg. You will get like a real something crazy will go your way. But what you need to understand is that discipline and being consistent with it, that is preparing you to receive any blessing that may come your way. Mm-hmm. So it's important that you're disciplined on what you're doing. So then it comes into focus as well. Yeah.
Definitely. I definitely agree. What do you feel like the power of momentum is like? So let's say you have 5 books on your bookshelf. You've not read one book yet. So when you read that one book, do you feel like it might boost you to read a second, then the third, then the fourth, and the fifth? And do you feel like people need to keep that momentum?
I feel like if you have momentum, you just think about a snowball starting at the top of a mountain, right? Mm-hmm. As it gets closer to the bottom, it gets faster, it gets bigger, it picks up more snow. It becomes harder to stop. Um, you think about a train, a freight train.
Hmm.
Freight trains are really hard to stop, like really, really hard to stop.
Yeah.
They have to stop like a mile and a half out from the station in order to slow down in time. So you got to understand that when you're beginning a task or when you're beginning a new kind of endeavor, you're just the train and the engine and the driver. And as you go through and you're completing these small little goals, you're adding carts,
Hmm.
you know, and you're picking up a little bit of speed and you're adding carts to the back of this train engine. When you stop, you're not taking carts away because you've already done the work to accumulate them. But what you're doing is you're adding the brakes every time. So the way I cope with that is I'll go for a period where I'll absolutely just beast something, right? But in my head, what I'll tell myself when I become tired or exhausted or when I don't feel like doing anymore, I'll say, this is a break. And I'll tell myself that this is a break, but I'll hold myself accountable and do my due diligence so I don't slip out of the habit of doing that work.
Mm, definitely. No, I definitely agree. It's a good analogy. Definitely with the snowball, as you know, it gets bigger, it gets greater. There's really no stopping once that snowball's halfway down the mountain, is there?
That's right.
Perfect. The third point I wanted to mention was doing hard things compared to the easy route and how that really affects the long-term results. So let's say
Yeah.
today, instead of going for a run, I wanted to eat a donut. It's easy.
Mm-hmm.
If you consistently are doing the easy thing, where do you think that would end in a year's time?
I think that's a good question. That's a really good question. But I think we need to address kind of like psychology as well, because a lot of people they struggle with their own psychology. That's the biggest battle people ever face is themselves. So you need to understand that when you're doing things, when you're completing a task, or when you go out to try and complete a task, yeah, today might not be the best day, but you need to understand your variance and your range. So is today the best day you could absolutely perform, or is today a bit of a rubbish day, or is
Hmm.
today an okay day? So yeah, you might have wanted to go out for a run, but you might have wanted to eat a donut instead. Sometimes do the easy thing because you're rewarding yourself,
Hmm.
but then also you need to hold yourself accountable because that hard task, it's not going to go away and it's going to keep burning away at you. And that's when I feel like people's psychology, it starts slipping because the guilt comes in. They start feeling anxious about not completing the task. Then the self-worth comes into it. And then it becomes like a vicious cycle that perpetuates itself. You ate the donut, you didn't do the hard task, you did the easy task, you're not going to do the hard, and it just gets worse and worse. And then it becomes a snowball, but against your favor. So it can lead, if you manage it correctly, for people that struggle with getting started, it's all about managing your expectations. So instead of eating the full donut or instead of completing all of the easy tasks, try to do half of it and then say, right, I'll do a little bit of that and I'll do a little bit of this. And once you start chipping away at the hard things, they become easier over time. Mm,
Definitely. I definitely agree. Like you said, snowball effect, but against your favor.
that's right.
The paperwork builds up. You've got to do more now than you had to do yesterday. The homework
Yeah,
builds up.
that's right.
Of
Yeah,
course,
that's
it's
right.
harder to get off your ass after you've ate that donut than it is if you did it before.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Perfect. I definitely agree. Do you think you personally will ever be satisfied with where you are, or is there always a bigger challenge? Is there always a higher mountain you need to climb?
Knowing who I am, knowing myself, no, I probably won't be satisfied with what I want to do and where I want to go. But in the opposite respect, I am a pretty simple man. I do have very, very defined goals of when I know I've reached a goal. I know when I've reached that. I know when I've scored. Basically, I
Mm.
know when I've reached that point that I need to call it a day. And I've still got a lot of work to do. So I haven't reached that point yet. One of my big goals is to send my kids to private school. Um, and I've got 4 kids. So I'm not by no way, shape or form close to doing that yet. So yeah, I've got a big mountain to climb. But we're making great progress. When you're chipping away at a big task, I've got many goals in my life. But when you're chipping away at big tasks, a lot of people, which is good, it's good. But a lot of people, what they do is they go straight to the task without building a foundation. So you've got to build yourself a foundation. See, what you got to understand is, you know, pyramids last longer than skyscrapers. And if you look at the wide, broad base of a pyramid, it's real wide, it's real broad, you know. To achieve the same kind of effect, skyscrapers have to dig real deep in the ground. Pyramids, it's completely different. So you want your base to be really broad, and it gives you a foundation to build higher. And that again comes into putting yourself in the best position to succeed.
Mm. I really like that analogy. Pyramids last longer than skyscrapers. Make sure you have a solid base. I love that.
Yeah, 100%.
Perfect. If you was to compare yourself to 10 years ago, are you happy with your progress?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, 26 now. I'm 27 in a couple of months. At 16, yeah, I'm 26. Yeah.
For some reason, brother, I thought you was much older than that. I mean that in the best way possible.
Yeah. A lot of people say that because I'm mature. I've got 4 kids. I started having kids when I was 17, so I was a real young buck.
Started
100%, yeah. But when I was 16, absolute savage, just ruthless. Didn't have any long-term perspective on what I wanted to do. Was in all kinds of badness, getting arrested and things like that. So the progression in terms of knowing what I want and getting my life on track, yeah, it's come full circle, and it's absolutely been going in the right path. Like I can think, since I started my trading career 5 years ago, I can see incremental progress year on year on year. So last year when I was trading, I made money, and I got my trading account balance to certain points, but the consistency wasn't there yet. But I felt like I was this close. This year, my trading account balance is where it was last year, but the consistency is X amount times better, So, yes, when you're going through things and when you're doing things, you need to look back over where you've come from, over where you began, and understand if you're not making any progress, it's time to look at something else.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. I definitely agree. So you are happy with the past 10 years of progress that you've made, obviously coming from where you are to where you are right now. It's polar opposites. Do you think
Yeah.
there could have been more, or I know that yourself, you do believe that there is always more that could be done, but looking back from that, you're in a much better place now.
Yeah, but you have to, again, it comes to managing expectations.
Mm-hmm.
So I could have looked back over these last 10 years. I could have said, I could have done that. I could have done this. But all of those things led me to this point here. And everything right now, I mean, I don't have ill health, thank God. I've got beautiful children. Mm-hmm. I've got good relationships with their mothers. I have supportive people all around me. I'm trying to build all these different businesses from the ground up. So I wouldn't want it any different way. I wouldn't have wanted a handout. I wouldn't have wanted things to become easier, because it would have made the sweetness of it that bit less sweet. Mm-hmm. And right now, everything does taste really sweet to me because I've been working hard, and mm-hmm. everything that I've been doing is manifesting itself in forward progression. There's been no regression these last 2 years. There might be, and this is where, there might be you might take 2 steps forward and take a half step back. A lot of people tend to focus only on that half step back and they get disillusioned. But looking back over the last 100 steps that you've taken, man, you've come so far. So, there can always be more that's done, but know, 48 laws of power, know when you've achieved your victory. Yeah. And celebrate that victory and have gratitude.
Definitely. I definitely agree. So what triggered that ambitious mentality? Obviously, being stuck where you were 10 years ago, a lot of people are still in that mentality of achieving goals that don't really matter. What triggered you and what snapped you out of that to change your perspective and change your goals to what they are now?
I'd say 3 things primarily. And it's crazy because a lot of these things happened within 12 calendar months. So it was a big year for me, really big year. And then that led to, a huge change in my mindset when I was like 21. So the first 3 things happened when I was 16. So a friend got shot in the head and passed away. This was alongside. This was 10 years ago. So I'm not going to say his name because, rest in peace. Secondly, my grandmother passed away from cancer. And then thirdly, this was all within like the space of 3 or 4 months. And then thirdly, I got arrested by the police. I got locked up. And the reason they gave me for locking me up, and bear in mind, this was around the time that I was doing unlawful things. This was around the time they locked me up, and they said the reason they could lock me up was because I was black, because I was wearing dark clothing, and because I was in an area where other black youths wore dark clothing. So, the arrest was proven to be unlawful. We made a complaint to the IPCC, and we got a letter of apology from the Greater Manchester Police Commissioner. Still have that letter today as well. So all of those things, they kind of led me to assess, like, you're either going to end up dead or you're going to end up in jail if you carry on doing what you're doing. Then when I was 17, I had my son. But what really changed my mindset was when I was 21 and I couldn't box anymore. And I had to change my life completely, because that really threw a spanner in the works. I was a really talented boxer and I had everything going for me. I trained hard. So I had to change my mindset to becoming business and entrepreneur driven. And that was what led me to do that. When I was 16, like a 5-year progression, and I will come into the next 5 years. So, sometimes they say an overnight success. It happens, but it takes 10 years, man. It's not an overnight success, man.
Exactly. I was speaking about overnight success in yesterday's video. Rich Dad Poor Dad, I've actually got his book on my shelf over there. He was in a negative for the first 3 years of writing his book. He wrote his book in 97. He became an overnight success in 2000. It's a long process. Nothing happens overnight, but the self-discipline to carry on chipping away at that big object that's in the way, eventually it will crumble. And then you can carry on strolling by, stronger than ever.
Yeah, that's right.
Perfect. And lastly, just to finish it all off, a message for everybody watching. What would you like to put out there into the world?
Yeah, just understand 2 things. Firstly, the decisions you make today, your future self will either hate you for it or thank you for it. So act in your best interests at all times, because there's something a lot of people don't understand called compound interest, and it's that interest kind of grows exponentially, so it doesn't have a limit to how much it can continue growing. So if you act in your best interest, there's no telling what could happen. That could come in 5, 10, 15 or 20 years, and that comes down to self-discipline. Secondly, I'd say with this coronavirus lockdown, first of all, stay safe. But secondly, with this coronavirus lockdown, this is a period where there's a lot of financial wealth that's being transferred from one area to another. And it's a period where if you do your due diligence and you read and you educate yourself, you can really position yourself to emerge from this better. You can become a leaner, faster, more efficient version of yourself. The lockdown is very hard psychologically in a lot of people, because our day-to-day routines have been changed. But if you kind of approach it with the mentality, if I study on the right things, if I try and learn that language that I've always wanted to learn, or try to take that accounting course that I've always wanted to take, whatever it may be, if you do that during this lockdown, one of the hardest periods of time in recent memory for everybody, when you come out of it, you'll be so much stronger and you'll be so much further ahead of everyone else. You would have leveled the playing fields. So that's my message to people.
Perfect. It's a great message. Great. I thank you for joining us today. And what I wanted to do before you go is, Tashan is the owner and founder of GorillaStrength. If you want to just put out your handles, your Instagram, whatever social media you have, what is the handle for that?
Yeah, so my Instagram is GorillaStrength Ltd. So Gorilla, GorillaStrength Ltd. Yeah, that's my handle, man. It's a lot of trading stuff about clothes. Nothing about clothes yet, because we're not ready yet. But a lot of workout stuff. Yeah,
it's definitely inspirational. Perfect, great. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to end the recording here, and thank you for joining.
Cheers, thank you.